Hey everyone, today I'm here with my good friend Lori, and just a quick introduction of how we met. I used to be a firearms instructor for a pretty small school here in the Eugene-Springfield area that actually taught classes right out here, and you were a student in one of the classes, and was it your first time ever taking a training class?
Yes.
And so I was assigned one-on-one with you and your friend for the whole day. And again, that was like 4 or 5 years ago now, maybe. And we've just kind of stayed in contact ever since. And all the way up to today, we were out here shooting. You were comparing a couple different guns you were looking at buying, just to get some more experience. And both myself and Christian, who was also an instructor with that company, or range safety officer, depending on who you ask, we've got to know you that way, and we've kind of just kept in touch. You've continued training since then at a couple different schools, and you've really been, from that first time I ever saw you shoot up to now when we were shooting earlier today, I think it's very clear that you have progressed significantly as a shooter. So I wanted to take an opportunity to let Lori explain lessons that she's learned along the way, tips that you might have for other people learning, because from not that I'm an expert by any means, when someone has even an intermediate level of experience, sometimes you forget some of the things you had to learn along the way. We forget what we didn't know. So I was hoping, since it's going to be a little bit fresher for you, getting your perspective I think would be really valuable for this. So starting out, can I ask what made you want to seek out training and seek out, being a gun owner or user in the first place?
Oh, well, several years ago, I was the victim of a violent crime. I was actually held at gunpoint by a drug addict who had 2 weapons, and they were handguns. And at different times during the 2.5 hours that I was there, he had them unattended. But I had no idea how to use a weapon, what to do with it. I was scared of it. And of course, the situation was paralyzing anyway.
Sure.
But after everything worked out and it all turned out okay, I decided I never wanted to not have knowledge about something again. So that at the very least, I could make an informed decision about whether or not I wanted to do whatever it was, be it carrying a gun, driving a car, whatever that would be.
Absolutely.
So that's what prompted me.
Yeah, and that's awesome, because thankfully I've never been in that situation, but I have been in other situations where you feel helpless, and helpless is not a good feeling. Knowing that there are even tools available to you, but not understanding how to use them. Yeah, that's a pretty intense jumping off point to want to get into it. But that also, I'm sure, made you a very motivated student and someone who was earnestly looking for this information.
Yeah, more motivated than I would have been if it hadn't happened. I don't know that I ever would have had the nerve to come out and do a class, especially that's dominated mostly by males, and having no knowledge whatsoever. I felt like I was going to hold everybody back because I'd never even held a handgun. I didn't know what to do at all. But the power to overcome that helplessness really motivated me.
Awesome.
To do something that I wound up actually really loving.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess going off what you just said about it being a very male-dominated atmosphere, that's absolutely true. I would totally agree to that. Was there ever a barrier to where you almost didn't take a class, or you actively considered not taking a class simply because of that fact?
Well, yes, but again, my fear of being a victim again made me overcome that. But the first class that I actually took, you were there, and I was the person who knew the least in the class, and so I sort of got set off to the side, but was also given one-on-one instruction. And so that is what really, you made it feel like it was okay that I didn't know what I didn't know, and then having the skill was important, and you were willing to take the time to teach me. And that's what gave me the guts to kind of go through and keep training.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's true.
And hopefully this video doesn't come across as me trying to toot my own horn. But was there anything that you did that day, your first time ever taking a training class, was there anything you did or anything that helped kind of alleviate that stress or pressure of being, I think you and your friend were the only females in that entire class. Was there anything that kind of helped get you through that day that you were able to do?
Well, I had a friend. I brought a friend, which I highly recommend, especially if you can't do something alone. Bring a friend, and that really helped. But I have to be honest. After I took the class, I actually didn't choose to carry a gun for over a year because I realized it was a life and death situation, and I didn't think I had it in me to make that decision. So, but I had the knowledge then to make that decision. Sure. But I wanted to keep training so that if I ever wanted to, then I still could. And so, again, it was just that gut desire. I really want to do this. I brought my friend, but then I made a friend. Sure. And so then that helped me too.
So would you say that taking that first training class revealed how unaware of things you were? Do you think that really opened you up to a new world that you might not have gotten if you just went out shooting with someone out in the boonies and just poked holes in paper? Do you think that was a really good kind of leaping off point?
Yes, because I learned the safety that was involved, because that was the thing about using a firearm, is that it is truly life and death, and you need to be able to use it safely. And when you're just out plinking in the woods on a piece of paper, you're not getting the constant feedback about, no, don't do this, or yes, do that, or this is a training scar, don't do that. And so having an instructor with you, giving you the right equipment, gives you more tools in your toolbox to use in the future.
Yeah. And just, I guess, to have it explicitly stated, before you took that first class, did you already have a gun? Did you have to rent a gun?
No, I didn't have a gun. The guy who ran the class that I did, he had weapons that you could use. You had to pay a fee, and then after I got out here, then he sort of looked at me and assessed what my qualifications were and picked a gun that he thought I could handle. Because I am older and I don't have a lot of upper body strength. I have arthritis in my hands, so they don't always work. And so that was really helpful, was having someone say, this is the tool you should try. And but I did not have a gun before that.
So then would you recommend someone just getting into it, instead of buying a gun first and then going to a class, would you recommend, if they have rentals available, renting a gun first and then learning what's working and what's not?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are quite a few places that you can do a demo shoot, is what they call it. So you can try different weapons, because if you've never fired one before, you don't know what you like or what you don't like, or what your strengths or even your weaknesses might be. So having an opportunity to fire multiple kinds of weapons really gives you the tools that you need to make a good decision. Because that's a big chunk of money to lay down.
It is. It's a huge investment that you could find out this doesn't work at all for me.
And that's, my girlfriend actually did wind up buying a gun that she has never fired because she doesn't like it. She thinks she made the wrong choice. She didn't get a good opportunity to shoot it. So then she's stuck with a weapon that she wants to sell, but
it's automatically depreciated in value. It's like rolling a car off the lot. As soon as you take it out of the box, that value goes down. So you're not going to get all your money back.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the mindset of just what got you into it in the first place, getting over that mental barrier of getting into a class. Let's talk about the actual aspects of shooting. What are some of the things that you noticed you struggled with just in the process of firing a gun?
Well, definitely just the mechanics of getting the magazine into the weapon, racking the slide, doing those things that kind of require some manual dexterity.
Sure.
And then, but having someone who helps you with just the physics of it. Let gravity do that work for you. That really helped.
So what about the aspects of keeping your sights on target, or breathing, or anything like that? Was there any noticeable deficiencies that you found in yourself that you had to then overcome?
Yeah, I naturally wanted to hold my breath, and as you get fatigued, your weapon tends to lower, so you're off target more often. And so having someone standing there and saying, okay, breathe, 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 and think to yourself, squeeze, 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 really pick up your sight picture, take your time. You don't have to hurry. Take your time, because speed comes with time.
Right.
Or as you would say, slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. And so that really helped.
Okay. So after that first class, like you said, you didn't carry for a year after that. and I know you went out and sought some more training. What are some of the things you did after that first class to start progressing your skills and abilities as a shooter?
I took more classes that well, first of all, I repeated some basic classes. I think I repeated that first class 3 times before I felt confident enough to move on to the next class. And then I knew a couple of people like you and Christian. So when I would join a class, I wasn't necessarily alone.
Sure.
And where were we going with that?
So what are some of the things you did to continue progressing as a shooter and building those skills?
Okay. So I took more classes and learned to shoot with different positions. And then, having more context in the class, I met an instructor. I've actually met several instructors from different schools. And the philosophy is train with a lot of people. So you get a lot of information and you get a lot of feedback. So I started going to other places to train too. And that helped.
And I 100% agree with that. Take training from as many different people as you can, reputable instructors, preferably.
Yeah.
Because people are going to be better at different things, and you're going to glean different information from different people, and it's extremely valuable. So what are some specific things, like, let's say, to aid in the trigger control and getting a nice, smooth trigger pull? Because in my opinion, that's one of the most important things to getting shots on target, is that trigger press. You can have your sights on target, you can have your perfect stance, perfect grip, you can have a perfect, beautiful afternoon, but if you jerk that trigger, the only thing you're guaranteeing is that round's not going to go where you're aiming the gun. So what are some of the things that you've done to overcome things like that?
So one of the things that I do is I make sure that I'm breathing. I take a nice deep breath in and a nice deep breath out. But in my mind, I'm saying squeeze, 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 and then I just squeeze the trigger. And it's very precise and slow and methodical, because when you squeeze the trigger, the bullet's going to go where you're pointing. The recoil where the gun fires off, that's after the bullet comes out. And so I just try to maintain the good muscle control and breathing and saying over and over, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze.
Now, have you noticed that practicing it the correct way like that it is becoming a more natural process for you, where not having to think as much about it?
Yes, indeed. Because I would have to I struggle to shoot with 2 eyes open. I'm cross-eye dominant, so I would have to think about it. So training and practicing over and over made it more second nature instead of having to be so methodical about saying it.
Sure. So is there any sort of advice? Obviously, take training, get experience with different types of guns to see what's going to work for you. But what sort of advice would you have for someone who's maybe at that point where they've made that realization, I need to be able to take ownership of my own self-defense. I need to be prepared for situations. What advice would you have for that person? Like, to get them from, I've made the decision, I need training, or I need to get a gun. What's their next step? What would you recommend?
Well, at the very least, you can go online and look for classes in your own community. There are a lot of classes out there, but one of the things that's really important is to go down and read the reviews, because that's where you're going to find the truth. The people who are reviewing the classes, they have no investment.
Right.
So if there's a terrible instructor, you're going to see it, and then just don't do those classes.
Yeah.
And you can practice at home in a safe way if you've been taught how, and those things help you. Every action that you take with your weapon is going to impact somebody. Every bullet that you fire is going to have an impact. So you always want to know what you're doing under the best of circumstances, so that when the worst circumstances happen, you're prepared as much as you can.
Right, right. So you mentioned practicing at home. Is dry practice something that you do fairly often?
do. I didn't think it was okay, because again, I didn't have a lot of information. I didn't think it was okay to fire an empty weapon.
Okay.
I always taught that my whole life. Not really taught, though. I guess I saw it on TV.
Sure.
So you and Christian have both taught me you can practice without any ammunition. You take your gun, you clear it, you set the ammunition in a completely different bedroom so that there's no chance you can have an accidental misfire or discharge. And then you find a place where it's safe for you to point your weapon, and you practice. You practice drawing, getting your sight picture, reholstering. You just practice over and over so that it becomes very smooth and very second nature.
Right. And one of the things that I think is really valuable with dry practice is it doesn't cost anything.
Correct.
Once you have the gun, you're not spending money on ammo. And I find a lot of people will come out to the range when they're still very new to it, and you absolutely need live fire training. But because they haven't practiced those fundamentals, they might as well just be taking those rounds out and throwing them in the trash because they're not really getting anything out of that practice anymore. Whereas when you're practicing at home, you can really establish those fundamentals so that once you do get to the point where you're making that monetary investment in ammo, range fees, whatever else, you're now getting more for that investment.
Yeah.
I would say when I was early on shooting, I was probably doing 80% dry fire for 20% live fire. And the more dry practice you do, the more you can establish those fundamentals without worrying about recoil or anything else. I think the faster you're going to start progressing, especially in those early stages.
Yeah.
Is that something you've noticed with yourself?
Yeah, I totally agree, because you don't have to think about the recoil. Where was I going to go with that? You said something.
You don't have that stress of anticipating that recoil.
Yeah, and when you're doing dry fire, it's just a relaxed environment, so the muscle memory develops.
Right.
And but then firing with an instructor, the good thing about that is if you start to pick up training scars or bad habits, they can correct you so that when you're at home, you can do it the correct way.
Right. And I would definitely recommend taking a class first before doing the dry practice, because if you haven't taken training, the purpose of training, as I've heard from very reputable instructors, the purpose of training is learning what and how to practice. If you haven't been told the correct way to pull a trigger, you could start establishing those training scars, like you were saying. And one of the things you mentioned is check out course reviews, and I absolutely recommend that. From that same instructor, actually, one of the things he said was, if you throw a rock these days, you're going to hit a firearms instructor, and if you throw two, you're likely to find a good one. And you said look at course reviews. I would recommend probably not looking at the Facebook course reviews, because I know specifically in some of those cases, instructors will say, hey, if you leave a positive review, you'll get a free shirt or something else like that. I know here in the Northwest, there's a forum, Northwest Firearms. There's a lot of there's like a dedicated thread for course reviews on there. Try to find more of those third-party places for reviews, because when you're looking at the Facebook pages, that can kind of be influenced by, not to say don't look at those. There can definitely be a lot of value there, but try to find other sources than just the Facebook page for course reviews.
Yeah.
And if they have a YouTube channel, try to watch some of their videos, see how competent they look as an instructor. If they're struggling in their videos, they're probably not someone to take classes
And
with.
not just that, but sometimes obviously their personality styles come out in their videos.
Yeah.
And there are some guys out there I just never want to train with.
Sure.
And so if they have a video and you can look at it, you can look at somebody and go, wow, I really like this guy, I like his style, I think I'll train there.
Yeah. So we've been talking for quite a while now. Is there anything else that you would say to someone who's looking to get into guns or carrying a gun or anything like that?
Yeah, and even if you don't want to get into guns or carrying a gun, get the information. You can't make a decision without information. And you may choose never to carry. And like I did for a year, I didn't carry either. But you can't make a qualified decision unless you have good information. And it's information that you can't read about. You have to go out and do it yourself so that you can feel it and experience it, and then you can make an informed choice.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. I 100% agree with that. So I want to say thanks to Lori for being willing to do this video with me. I know being in front of a camera isn't something you're necessarily used to, so I appreciate you being willing to come out and talk to my viewers. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and throw those in the comment section down below. I'll try to get back to you as quick as I can. If you have questions for Lori, I'll try to get her answer from her so that I can post responses there, because I think obviously being a female in the firearms world, you have a very different experience into it than I have, and I think there's a lot of valuable information to be gleaned from that. So if you have questions, definitely throw them in the comment section, and we'll do our best to answer you guys. But anyway, with all that said, as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.